Dear laureates, on behalf of the Nobel Assembly at the Karolinska Institute, it is my privilege and pleasure to express our warmest congratulations and our deepest admiration as I now ask you to step forward to receive your prizes from the hands of His Majesty the King.
On December 10, 2008, French virologist François Sinosi was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, together with her colleague Louis Montaigne, in Stockholm Concert Hall for her discovery of the HIV virus. Over 30 years after her discovery, the world has yet to eliminate the AIDS epidemic or find an HIV vaccine. According to UNAIDS, nearly 37 million people in the world are now living with HIV. The World Health Organization also reported that an estimated 34 million people have died from AIDS-related causes so far. Dr. François Sinosi puts her faith in the potential of present-day technological advances to find an effective HIV treatment. She mentioned HIV treatment as HIV remission, similar to sustainable remission in cancer. She says scientists can achieve such accomplishments by developing strategies in the coming years, as she believes that when you want, you can.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Talk Vietnam. You're with me, Linh Hương. It's our privilege and honor to have in our studio today Dr. François Sinosi, an eminent virologist who co-discovered the human immunodeficiency virus, commonly known as HIV, in 1983, for which she was awarded the Nobel Prize in 2008. Dr. François Sinosi is also the president of the International AIDS Society. Dr. François Sinosi, thank you very much for joining us on our show today.
Thank you.
First of all, let's delve into your discovery of HIV back in 1983, for which you were awarded the Nobel Prize in 2008. What was the sequence of events that led to the discovery of HIV back in the early 1980s, and was there a defining moment?
The first critical step was certainly the contact with our colleagues, clinicians from my country, France, who came to us asking a very simple question: do you think a virus from this particular family of virus could be the agent responsible for this new emerging disease? So everything started at that point. We defined together what could be the best strategy, what could be the best patients to look for a virus. And it's according to that approach which samples to get, which patients to try first to identify the virus that we have been successful. We receive the biopsy from a patient's early 1983, and thanks to the patients also who kindly accepted to participate to the research. And a few weeks after, we had the virus in culture. That was not sufficient. That was the first step, but not sufficient to prove that the virus was responsible for the disease. And we work on it all during the year 1983 to make the link between the virus and the disease.
So how long in total did it take you to discover HIV, and what were the challenges?
As I said, it's a step-by-step process. You first isolate the virus, then you have to make the link between the virus and the disease, and that takes months. And also you had at the same time to characterize the virus, because it was a virus not yet known. So you had to characterize the components of the virus, including the genetic material of the virus and so on. And also, to develop at the same time diagnostic tests for both research, but also for diagnosis in order to try to prevent transmission by blood and blood derivatives. So It's not, research is always a step-by-step process, and it's not one day you make a discovery and you say, "Hurrah." That's not like that.
So there must have been a lot of challenges. What was the feeling of your team when you realized that you had identified the new virus?
Emergency. We realized that it was certainly an important discovery, but we knew also that we had to try to do as fast as possible for people living with the virus, but also to try to prevent others from this infection. And we were very naive at that time. We did not have any idea about the magnitude of the epidemic. We learned about the magnitude of the epidemic later on. We started to learn probably in 1984 that the epidemic was there in Africa already, and that many people were already infected by this virus in Africa. So we were naive because we did not know the magnitude of the epidemic. We were very naive because we said, okay, now that we have the virus, we will be very rapidly develop a treatment, rapidly develop a vaccine. And as you probably know, we still do not have a vaccine today. And we have a treatment today, but the treatment is a lifelong treatment. We don't have a treatment that cure for HIV. So we were very naive. We have learned all over the years, and thanks to the international efforts, many research studies that needed to be accomplished.
Now, the first HIV/AIDS epidemic appeared among the gay community in San Francisco. How have you seen this change over time?
I mean, that's right that the first cases were reported in the gay population. Rapidly, soon after, we had the cases also in hemophiliacs, cases also in infants born from infected mothers. So that was already the case in early '83. And that's a mistake, I think, because of the naive aspect that we have ourselves. We thought that the disease will be concentrated only in some population. That was very naive, because we didn't know what was happening in Africa.
Right.
I give it always as an example. Be careful. Be careful when you had in the media AIDS, the gay plague. I remember also in '84, the media in the United States writing, the French researchers have discovered the virus of the homosexuality. Unbelievable. Unbelievable, because today, more than 30 years after, we still suffer from this wrong information of the early '80s, because this virus can affect everyone.
Right.
But the most stigmatized population are those poor, affected, the most affected population, like gay men, like drug users, like sex workers, and still today they are suffering of discrimination and stigmatization, and this is wrong. This is wrong for the benefit of them, for the collective benefit for everyone in the world, because if we cannot have access to them because they're afraid, then they will not be treated, and they will continue to transmit to others.
HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, is one of the world's most serious health and development challenges. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, there were approximately 37 million people worldwide living with HIV/AIDS at the end of 2014. 17 million do not know they have the virus and need to be reached with HIV testing services. And around 22 million do not have access to HIV treatment. 2.6 million children worldwide living with HIV. Most of them were infected by their HIV-positive mothers during pregnancy, childbirth, or breastfeeding. Despite these challenges, there have been successes and promising signs. New global efforts have been mounted to address the epidemic, particularly in the last decade. According to UNAIDS, in June 2015, 15.8 million people living with HIV were accessing antiretroviral therapy globally, up from 13.6 million in June 2014.
I had a chance to read your autobiography on the Nobel website, and you wrote about how your childhood holidays were the indication of the future direction that your life would take. Could you tell us more about that?
Oh, that was really when I was very young, and I was very interested by life, let's say, in general. Animals, in the nature. I could spend hours to look and compare two small animals, and to see that one was walking better than the other. So I was wondering what's happening to the other. Is he sick? Is it sick? Yes or no? What's happening? So it's how it started. I think that I was interested in health in general, and certainly in research, in biomedical research. But I did not know at that time.
So how has winning the Nobel Prize affected you? And have you ever wondered what your life would be if you had not discovered HIV? And what made you decide to dedicate your whole career to HIV research?
First of all, I will say that I did not decide, life decided. It turned out that I was interested since I started my career in science, in this family of viruses and cancer. And probably I will have continued to work on cancer. And it turned out also that, as I said, the clinician came to us. And of course, because I had some expertise in this family of viruses, is how I got involved in HIV. But the funny thing is that now that I'm at the end of my career, is that we are finding similarities between cancer and HIV. So it looks like, I start on retroviruses and cancer. Now HIV and cancer, there is some relationship. So somehow it's a cycle.
It's a cycle. So you're doing what exactly you wanted yourself to do. Now, according to the UNAIDS in 2014, which is last year, there were about 37 million people living with HIV. So what challenges remain in the fight against HIV and AIDS 30 years after your discovery?
The first challenge is what we call implementation. Implementation of the tools that science has delivered. And the tools are either the test, the treatment, and the prevention tools. We don't have a vaccine. As I said, we don't have a cure. So these are the scientific challenges that we have today. We have to continue research on vaccine and cure. But we have also to make progress in implementing early testing to reach those that are infected and do not know that they are infected. We have to, when they are tested HIV positive, to make them to have access to care and treatment services, and to make sure to retain them into the treatment, since it's a lifelong treatment. Have to take in consideration that on lifelong treatment, there is a small proportion of patients that develop cancer, that develop aging disease, that develop metabolic disorders, which makes the link between the novel strategy for tomorrow and how to avoid those what we call non-AIDS comorbidities, which appear on long-term treatment.
During her most recent visit to Vietnam, Dr. François Barré-Sinoussi co-chaired Vietnam's 6th National Scientific Conference on HIV and AIDS. Nearly 1,000 Vietnamese and foreign delegates attended the event with more than 80 presentations revealing new information about HIV and AIDS. Let's find out more in the following.
According to statistics provided by the Ministry of Health, Vietnam has seen a 16% drop in the number of new HIV infections, 6.4% fall in the number of cases developing into AIDS, and 6.1% decline in the number of deaths caused by AIDS in 2015 compared to last year. This result illustrates the efforts made by the country to complete the 1990 target to end the AIDS epidemic by 2020.
Việt Nam đang hưởng ứng mục tiêu 90-90-90 của Liên Hiệp Quốc, tức là đến năm 2020, chúng ta phải phát hiện được 90% số người nhiễm HIV trong cộng đồng, điều trị được 90% số người nhiễm HIV đã được phát hiện và đảm bảo 90% những người điều trị ARV là có tải lượng virus ở mức thấp để tránh lây nhiễm cho người khác.
The 6th National Scientific Conference on HIV/AIDS held in Hanoi attracted 1,000 leading national and international delegates working in HIV/AIDS prevention and control. Professor Barré-Sinoussi, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2008, and other experts have given recommendations as part of a valued contribution to the success of Vietnam's HIV/AIDS program until 2020.
We need to have the community engagement at all the level. All the level, when I say all the level, that's mean for me, including at the level of basic science. We can make them to understand basic science. We already engage community and training of community and HIV was not an easy field to make them to understand the basic science and why it's so important for them.
According to international delegates, Vietnam has presented an effective community-based testing model. This has helped people living with HIV know their HIV status and receive appropriate treatment.
Because we now have more people accessing evidence-based community services for drug addiction than are in O6 centers, which is a really positive step in the right direction for treating addiction. We've also seen a 43% reduction in new infections in Vietnam, and probably most importantly, we have political commitment at the level of at least the Deputy Prime Minister towards Vietnam's 90-90-90 goals.
Well, I think what has impressed me the most in terms of the Vietnam response to HIV is the fairly rapid buildup, for example, of treatment. Very recently, we have just celebrated putting the 100,000th person on treatment for HIV. And that's really a remarkable achievement. And that has come about because of strong partnerships and strong political leadership and a very serious focus on who is the most vulnerable.
Vietnam currently has around 260,000 people living with HIV. Of those living with HIV, only around 90,000 are currently receiving antiretroviral treatment, or ARV. Vietnam has started piloting the 90-90-90 plan in Điện Biên, Sơn La, Nghệ An, Thanh Hóa, and Ho Chi Minh City from 2015 to 2017. This helps supervise and manage people living with HIV and raise their awareness of the importance of ARV treatment.
Dr. Barré-Sinoussi, through your co-chairing the Vietnam's 6th National Scientific Conference on HIV and AIDS, what did you learn about Vietnam's current situation of HIV and AIDS?
I mean, Vietnam is making progress during the last 10 years, wonderful progress. I'm very glad to see that myself. In the past, you know, I was worried about Vietnam. As I said, Vietnam is taking a decision regarding the key affected population, which is great. And now, you know, Vietnam recognized, I mean, transgender are accepted now in Vietnam, which is really great. And I congratulate really Vietnam for making this movement. That working with Vietnam since more than 20 years to see the progress that has been made in terms of providing services for drug users, for example, which is great. Still a lot has to be done. Regarding treatment coverage, only 46% of people living with HIV are on treatment, so that means that Vietnam has to do better regarding access to treatment. Vietnam has to do better in terms of access to the test and reaching those that are HIV positive and do not know that they are HIV positive. Vietnam has to do better in terms of follow-up monitoring of people who are on treatment. Vietnam has to do better as well in terms of prevention of mother-to-child transmission.
Would you have any advice to recommend?
I talked with a national program in Vietnam. I think it's really a question of strengthening human resources. I think it's essential, and working better and more, because they are starting really to do this in Vietnam, which is good. It will take some years, but working more with the community. They have program already showing that when you work with community of key affected population in order to reach the others, it's working. And so they have to strengthen all the effort around community-based intervention.
According to the Ministry of Health, Vietnam currently has around 260,000 people living with HIV. Among them, just around 90,000 are receiving antiretroviral treatment or ARV. The country is aiming for the 1990 target issued by the United Nations. This means that by 2020, 90% of people living with HIV will know their status. 90% will be treated with antiretroviral drugs, ARV, and 90% of ARV treatment can control the viral load in low status to prevent further infections.
Now, addressing the conference, Vietnamese Deputy Prime Minister Vũ Đức Đam quoted you saying, "There is always hope in life because there is always hope in science." I am very impressed by this statement. And do you personally see a hope in an HIV cure?
Oh yes. Otherwise, I was very much involved in what we call the International AIDS Society HIV Cure Initiative, because I decided myself that at one point, according to our scientific background, it was time to accelerate research on HIV cure. Now it depends what you call HIV cure, because there are several definitions of HIV cure. I personally believe that we as scientists should be able to develop a treatment that the patients can stop. The treatment will not fully eliminate the virus from the body, but the virus will be controlled without any treatment. It's what we can call remission. If we use the same word as in cancer, sustainable remission, persistent remission without any treatment. That is, I'm sure, is feasible, and I'm sure that the scientists will be able to develop a strategy for that in the coming years.
How about vaccines or a functional cure?
By the way, vaccine and cure research cannot be separate, because probably one of the components of cure strategy will be vaccine to stimulate the immune defense. So we should not oppose both vaccine research and cure research. They should work together. And vaccine research is making a wonderful progress since, let's say, 5-6 years. Since the vaccine trial in Thailand, showing with a vaccine candidate that very few percentage of volunteers were protected. Around 30% of the volunteers that were enrolled in the vaccine trial were protected. Not sufficient to say that we have a vaccine, but the scientists have learned from those vaccinees. Plus, the scientists have learned that there is a small proportion of people infected by HIV that late after, during their infection, they develop very efficient antibodies, and the scientists have worked on these antibodies and are now trying to develop a new vaccine candidate based on our knowledge on these antibodies. So the field is moving in the right direction, I believe personally now, because it's moving on taking into consideration both basic science but also clinical trial in parallel. So it's really the optimal condition to make progress in the field of vaccine today.
How do you feel about the stage we are now at HIV science? And when you discovered HIV more than 30 years ago, did you see that we'd be where we are now at that time?
No, not at all, because first of all, as I said, we were very naive, so we didn't know anything about the complexity of the interaction of the virus with the body. When I look back now, how much we have learned about this very complex interaction of different components of the virus with the different compartments of the body, is so many works that has been done, which are important for me, not only for HIV. I mean, it has been important for tuberculosis, for example. It is important for, we have learned a lot, for example, on components of our immune defense based on HIV science. Wow. So we are learning beyond HIV. It's not only HIV. There are some molecules that has been discovered because of HIV. HIV is also a tool for science.
Could you give us an update on the latest HIV/AIDS research that a lot of scientists are pursuing? And are there any recommendations from the World Health Organization concerning this?
I mean, in September, the WHO, World AIDS Organization, made new guidelines regarding early treatment. Now they recommend to treat everyone tested as HIV positive as early as possible. Secondly, in September, at the end of September 2015, they also now recommend to use antiretroviral treatment as pre-exposure prophylaxis. For example, in the gay population, if they think that they may have a sexual relationship at risk, they can take a pill of antiretroviral treatment before the sexual intercourse, and take a pill also after, for 2 days after the sexual intercourse, and they will be prevented against the infection.
So just like pregnancy.
It's exactly medicine. Yeah. So it's what we call pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP. WHO is now recommending PrEP for key affected populations, and I'm glad to say United States already approved several years ago the use of antiretroviral treatment for key affected population, and a few days ago my Minister of Health in France made the announcement that PrEP is also recommended in France for free of charge for key affected population, which is really great. And I hope that many other countries in the world will follow. I heard also at the National AIDS Conference here in Vietnam that the decision maker in Vietnam agrees that pilot study on PrEP can be started in Vietnam, which is good.
Dr. François Barrett-Sinoussi first came to Vietnam in 1988 to improve HIV diagnosis capacity and help the country build an HIV test laboratory. Over the past 25 years, she has made a non-stop contribution to the fight against HIV/AIDS in Vietnam.
Giáo sư François Barrett-Sinoussi không chỉ là một nhà khoa học vĩ đại mà còn là người bạn hết sức thân thiết với Việt Nam. Năm 1988, chỉ 5 năm sau khi trường hợp bà tìm ra virus HIV, bà đã sang Việt Nam và mở cái lớp tập huấn đầu tiên cho cán bộ khoa học Việt Nam và những người làm công tác xét nghiệm Việt Nam về virus HIV và các kỹ thuật chẩn đoán.
Thông qua các trao đổi của giáo sư thì chúng tôi được cập nhật thêm rất nhiều cái thông tin liên quan đến tình hình nghiên cứu về HIV trên thế giới, đặc biệt là những cái lĩnh vực liên quan đến sinh học, liên quan đến xét nghiệm, liên quan đến các giải pháp dự phòng và điều trị.
In 1990, 2 years after her visit, the Pasteur Institute of Ho Chi Minh City detected the first case of HIV infection in Vietnam. Since then, Professor Barrett-Sinoussi has always been working closely with Vietnam colleagues, according to her strong commitment in building capacity, training and technology transfers. This time in Vietnam, Dr. Sinoussi was invited to be an honorary guest at the scientific conference, The Future of Reproductive Biotechnology and Stem Cell Medicine for Sustainable Development and Human Health. At the event, she made a keynote lecture on the latest research on HIV, as well as directions for research and development of biomedical field.
My second message on this slide is to tell you how important it is, particularly for the young generation of scientists who may be in the room, to keep in mind that virologists or biomedical researchers should take in consideration the observation made by, especially when you work on biomedical fields.
Professor Barrett-Sinoussi developed a lifelong therapy which treats HIV infection and provides permanent remission of the infection without the need to take further medicine. According to Vietnamese scientists at the conference, this new therapy suggests that reproductive biotechnology and stem cell research could open a new era to treating people with HIV in the future.
Những cái nghiên cứu của bà ấy, tuy là đi sâu về HIV và SIDA nhưng mà cái cơ chế cơ bản nó cũng là thống nhất một cái cơ chế điều khiển qua cái hệ thống miễn dịch. Những cái nghiên cứu của chúng tôi nó không chỉ là cùng song hành với bà để mà tìm ra những cái khía cạnh có tính chất cơ chế. Khi mình đưa tế bào gốc vào thì đồng thời nó cũng là tác động lên hệ thống miễn dịch và có thể nó đã tái tạo được những cái loài tế bào miễn dịch và đủ cái năng lực để tiêu diệt hoặc là loại trừ cái tế bào cái virus HIV.
Since 2000, Professor Barrett-Sinoussi has been working as a coordinator at the French National Agency for Research on AIDS and Viral Hepatitis in Vietnam. Until recently, she cooperates with Vietnam scientists in improving testing capacity for early detection of HIV. This has helped Vietnam to achieve the target for HIV/AIDS prevention and control by 2020, towards meeting the UN target of controlling the epidemic by 2030.
Dr. Barrett-Sinoussi, in your autobiography in the Nobel website, you mentioned your first visit to Vietnam was in 1988. How was it like at that time?
It was a difficult period, very difficult period. I mean, it's totally different from now. But when you see, and I came back 6 years afterwards, I did not recognize the country at all.
It changed completely.
Totally changed. Totally changed. I mean, I remember being in Hanoi in 1988. It was almost nobody in the street. It was nothing, almost nothing in the store at that time. I came back 6 years afterwards. Was so many people in the street, bicycle at that time, not yet car or motorcycle as now, although it was already starting in 94. I mean, I could see the smile on the faces of the population, which was great.
Through your Vietnamese colleagues at the Pasteur Institute in Ho Chi Minh City, we've learned that you have been collaborating with Vietnam in HIV and AIDS research over the years. Could you tell us more about that collaboration?
It's a long-term collaboration since it started in the mid-90s. So 20 years ago, it started by studying what were the viruses circulating in Vietnam. We identified with our colleagues at the Pasteur Institute in Ho Chi Minh City the most predominant strain of viruses circulating in Vietnam. We started also to implement to the Pasteur Institute in Ho Chi Minh City technology for following up monitoring the patient on treatment, measuring the viral load and resistance to antiretroviral treatment in patients on treatment. And of course now they are able to do it by themselves, which is great. And we are continuing since then to have program on co-infection, TB, HIV co-infection, and we are starting a new program to try to give some recommendation on how to better reach drug users that may be infected by HIV, but also by hepatitis C, and we will probably develop a program also on hepatitis C infection in drug users.
As you mentioned earlier, you officially ended heading a research unit as of September this year. Could you share with us your next step in your career?
All my next step in my career will be, right now I don't have a lab anymore because the lab closed in September, but I'm continuing certainly to make advocacy. To make advocacy for accelerating research in some direction, like HIV cure research. That, of course, I'm continuing for the International AIDS Society. I am also the honorary director of the honorary president of the International Pasteur Network. And so I will have some activities to strengthen the capacity in the whole network of the Pasteur Institute. I'm still coordinator of the French-Vietnamese program on HIV/AIDS, and I will continue at least for a year. I'm a member of numbers. Don't ask me even how many, because I don't know myself how many. Expert panel on HIV at international level. So I will continue this kind of activity. I can tell you that my agenda is full until 2017 already.
Wow. So you have always advocated the Pasteurian vision of research. How do you define this vision?
The Pasteurian vision is exactly what we call today science for the benefit of humanity, is what Louis Pasteur said. And he was also saying that science has no border. It's for the benefit of humanity. It's exactly what we are doing now. I realized myself by working on HIV, by the way, the vision of Louis Pasteur, because the vision of Louis Pasteur was really not to make science for science, was to make science that can be translated in tools for health of population in the world, not only in France, but in the different countries in the world. And the reason why he decided to implement Pasteur Institute, the first one in Ho Chi Minh City. Then he sent Yersa, he sent many of his collaborators everywhere in the world to implement Pasteur Institute everywhere in the world, because he saw already science for the benefits of global health, what everybody is speaking today about global health. But that was the Pasteur vision, translation of science for the benefit of global health.
You already set a very good example for young researchers, young scientists. So is there any message you would like to pass on to those who are starting their career in science?
Oh yes, I mean, if they start their career in science, they should keep in mind that it's a career that they start not for themselves, but for the others. That is my main message. They should not be motivated only by their CV, by their publication, to make a career which is recognized by the peer. They need to make a career that could be for the benefit of the population in the world, not for themselves.
Well, thank you very much for spending your time with us in our show today, and good luck with all your future endeavors in the fight against HIV and AIDS.
Thank you very much.
And that just wrapped up this edition of Talk Vietnam. Thank you very much for being with us. Good luck and see you next time.